Because connected television advertising uses the same kind of plumbing and wiring that we associate with paid search and social, advertisers are already today using it to drive some of the same mid to lower funnel outcomes that you would expect from paid search and social. So that would include things like website visits, revenue, return on ad spend, and incrementality. And it's not just the biggest, most sophisticated advertisers who are doing this, by the way. This is, I think, one of the exciting things about the trends that I see in our space is the democratization of access to these tools. So we're seeing it in smaller advertisers, mid-size advertisers, even B2B are all getting in on the game. And at the same time, advertisers are able to do this while preserving what has made television advertising so appealing to marketers for so long. It's still a lean back medium. It's still the biggest canvas in the home. And so it's still very well suited for driving or producing great brand stories. And marketers can still get that benefit. But at the same time, with changes in technology and some other approaches, which I'm sure we'll talk about, they can also get performance too, which makes not only the CMO happy, but also the CFO happy.
That's really interesting. Now, before I ask you a bit about best practices, I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about MNTN and how you help marketers with their CTV campaigns.
MNTN is a self-service software provider that transforms connected television advertising into the third scalable performance advertising channel, right alongside paid search and social. So we help advertisers who need their media to produce lower funnel outcomes, achieve those outcomes through connected television advertising, which is a relatively new concept in the sort of the arc of media and its evolution. You know, TV has oftentimes been used typically for branding, but MNTN helps them unlock that for performance.
Well, that's interesting. You should talk about performance, because now looking ahead, there's a lot of uncertainties in the economy. Marketers want to, see results from their advertising, as you mentioned, both satisfy both the CMO and the CFO. So what best practices are you seeing emerge from advertisers who are using CTV to drive performance?
The best practices that we're seeing, Rob, in CTV advertising are not unlike what you would see in paid search and paid social. I would characterize the advertisers who are doing it well with all having certain things in common. They all possess an agile approach to their CTV advertising. This is not an exercise in developing a plan that cannot be moved or changed. They all bring the spirit of rapid experimentation. And that experimentation encompasses the audiences that they attempt to reach and convert. It encompasses their creative and how they think about A/B testing creative. And it's all done in pursuit of driving an outcome. Now, getting that kind of performance from connected television advertising, as opposed to, say, taking a branding approach more traditionally, does require some changes. And we've seen these changes, again, in advertisers large and small. You don't need a massive team in order to pull these sorts of changes off. So we talk about audiences, for example, experimenting with a range of different audiences, meaning first-party audiences, CRM data, third-party audiences, and really taking an experimental approach to identify those audiences that perform best is something that we see a lot of advertisers doing these days. Similarly, advertisers who are bending their CTV advertising more towards performance are experimenting in search of the right balance between prospecting for new customers and retargeting people who've already expressed some notion of interest in your brand based on things like website visits. And finding that right balance is sort of like what I remember seeing from the auto industry. Your mileage may vary. Remember that line? It's very similar in advertising. Each brand sort of has to find their right equilibrium. Performance in this case, in CTV, often means having the right information at your fingertips. When we think about branding campaigns on TV, at least in my own experience, I remember finishing up a campaign and then sometimes having to wait 8, 10, 12 weeks to get reports back that would tell me things like, how much brand lift did I get from my campaign? In the world of performance, advertisers need the right information at their fingertips, and they need it a lot faster. It means also being able to act on that information and being able to do that rapidly. And so here, automation helps. And Mountain isn't the only one that brings technology and automation to bear, but we optimize for performance, for example, for whatever the particular goals are, and we do it automatically, which helps to democratize access to the medium, because teams, quite frankly, don't need a squadron of data scientists assigned to marketing in order to help unlock some of these insights. It means, as we talked about, taking a fresh approach to creative and really thinking through creative best practices to determine what combination of offer, sense of urgency, call to action can really drive the best overall response from your viewers. It means taking an omnichannel approach. I think today's performance marketers know that the path to purchase is not a straight one, and that consumers oftentimes will have multiple touch points before they decide to actually take action. And so having an omnichannel approach that doesn't just take into account advertising channels, but also thinks about customer experience is really important. The best advertisers I've seen think through how does their website, how does their landing page, how does their mobile experience map to the advertising, creative, and messaging that they're putting into the world. It helps to create, that approach helps to create a well-roundedness for that customer experience that, generally speaking, helps to drive up conversion rates. So we're really talking about a holistic approach. Technology can help to make this a very seamless process, though.
Now, recently we've seen a lot of really interesting developments. Netflix now sells advertising. Disney Plus just added advertising. So we have a lot more inventory out there. And I was kind of curious, just looking ahead to 2023, what kinds of trends do you expect to emerge in CTV advertising?
That's a great question, Rob. I think the trends that we'll see in CTV advertising are all favorable for both consumers and advertisers. I think publishers may have it the hardest when we think about the competition for attention. But for consumers and advertisers, boy, it's a good time. There's no sign that the cord cutting phenomenon will abate anytime soon. The behaviors that CTV enable from consumers to be able to take a true on-demand approach to their viewing, giving them more control, has now had enough time to cement itself across every demographic. And so I expect consumers will continue to flock into the medium. That makes it appealing to advertisers who want to reach and convert new audiences. So the audience trends are good. But if we take a step back and look at what's happening in the broader marketplace, I'm reminded of some of the things that we saw not too long ago in Q2, Q3 of 2020, when COVID lockdowns were really fresh. And back then, the economy certainly got unstable, and marketers, CEOs, CFOs, all were clamoring to figure out what to do in that environment. Do they pause ad spending? Do they spend even more on advertising to sustain demand? And how will the consumer react? And I think the lessons that we can draw from that moment indicate that in a wobbly economy, which is the word that I use a lot these days to describe the environment that we're in, CFOs, CEOs, and CMOs together are all going to take a fresh look at the marketing budget and really focus on what's driving measurable outcomes. What can we prove works, and not only works, but that delivers a result rapidly, that can deliver money back to the company that they can turn around to fund the next month's advertising budget. And so in a wobbly economy, I think CFOs, CEOs, and CMOs very clearly have said they are going to prioritize performance and outcomes. And I think that's certainly going to continue. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the context of what's been a consistent driver of performance for advertisers for the last nearly 10 years or so, and that's paid social. Because paid social, I would argue, has had say 4 to 6 of the worst weeks of its existence. And we've seen advertisers pausing spend in some of these platforms, shifting spend. I think it'll be interesting to see how they respond to the current environment. The good news is that CTV advertising is a safe haven for brands who crave brand safety, who crave data privacy and security, but who still want and need a channel that delivers measurable results. So that's a bit of a snapshot of where things are, but I think overall, I feel bullish about where we are and where we're headed.